Welcome to Heritage Heroes, the fourth in the series featuring people on the front line of saving our urban legacy. Wars and the passage of time have probably done less damage to the monuments and historic hearts of our towns than modern development. Our series is about the individuals from all walks of life who share a conviction that there is room for the past in our rapidly expanding cities. Many historic buildings, open spaces and traditional neighbourhoods owe their survival to the determination of a handful of people. These individuals are our heroes, chosen by an independent jury of urban heritage experts. It wasn't until 1953 that Nepal's first road connecting the capital, Kathmandu, with the Indian border was built. The first influx of tourists found a culture largely unchanged for hundreds of years. And in Patan, just 5 kilometers south of Kathmandu, a wealth of ancient buildings. Nepal is the birthplace of the Buddha. Patan, going back 1700 years, is the oldest Buddhist settlement of all. Surviving to this day are over 1,000 temples, shrines and monuments, although most of the buildings date back to the 16th and 17th centuries. The Kathmandu Valley is a region prone to earthquakes, and the tremors down the centuries have taken their toll. The most recent, in 1934, destroyed 20% of the buildings in Kathmandu Valley, killing over 8,000 people. The other enemy is modern development. Nepal's architectural inheritance going back to the 3rd century was under threat. Enter the Kathmandu Valley Preservation Trust, founded in 1991 by American Eric Theophile and Austrian Eduard Sekler, and joined that same year by Nepalese architect Rohit Ranjitkar. These are our heritage heroes. On a visit to Kathmandu, Eric Theophile and Eduard Sekler had been appalled at the dilapidation of Patan Durbar Square. Their vision was for a dynamic trust, channeling overseas money to Nepalese who shared their concern. Nepali architect Rohit Ranjitkar grew up next to Patan Durbar Square. In the 1970s, Rohit used to watch his father, an engineer, working on the buildings. He decided to follow in his father's footsteps. In less than a decade, the trust, with $2.5 million raised by its founders, says it has restored some 50 buildings, mostly in and around the Patan temple complex. Often away from the site mobilizing funds, the founders say the director of the trust, Rohit Ranjitkar, is the embodiment of what it's all about. A Nepali in charge of saving the heritage for the benefit of Nepalese. For Ranjitkar, it's not the devastation caused by the earthquakes that he finds hard to take, but the abandonment of the old houses by the local Nepalese. Many prefer to live in new concrete homes rather than restore their old houses.
Everybody wants to have new. And this is also in our social context. It's kind of a pride or it's kind of a status in the neighborhood.
But Ranjitkar says the trust has a solution.
So there are so many places you can find nice houses which was not used properly. These, you can say like they are very good candidate for new purpose, sort of like it could be guest house, or even if they can rent, it can be a good income for them. I spent more time convincing them than doing my own work.
This house was converted to a guest house in 2006. Owner Devendra Shrestha now makes a healthy income.
From last September, we are very busy since up to this time.
The house has 8 rooms, all with the original period features. But the refurbishment allows for the inclusion of modern amenities. Empty houses are prone to termites and beetles.
This house was pretty in bad state, in dilapidated state when we take over. It was unused since 94, 95. Nobody was living here. People has to live here. They have to, it needs a movement, it needs a vibration. Otherwise, insect will start, eating the wood and making holes in the mud.
This house ended up as the Trust's headquarters.
I love to work here, actually. Sometimes it almost feels like I should not work. I just look watching from the window.
Ranjit Kaur's office overlooks the Patan Royal Palace complex, constructed in the 17th century by King Malla. Despite earthquake damage in 1833 and again in 1934, it is still one of the finest intact grouping of palaces and temples in South Asia.
This is the most important part of the whole restoration project. This was built in 1627 from the King Siti Narsingh Malla, who is very religious king. There are about 75 images all around. Almost every goddesses and gods are here.
The temple buildings are popular with Kathmandu's tourists. Over 500,000 came here last year. It's given Ranjit Kaur another idea for finding new uses for heritage buildings. The Trust has recently helped finish the restoration of this cafe. He says a new generation of Nepalese are rediscovering their heritage and seeing new business opportunities.
Besides tourists, local people are getting more attracted in this kind of stuff as well.
People within the country, yes. I think.
They love to come to these places, explore things about this.
However, tourism was badly affected by the 10-year insurgency of the Maoists. A peace deal was signed in 2006, but a recent strike kept tourists off the streets for a week, wreaking havoc with a fragile economy.
I feel still, if the politically everything is stable, people still want to visit the Kathmandu Valley because it's all very unique architectural masterpieces. It's not only in different buildings, even in one monument, in one temple, you see like hundreds of different elements, hundreds of different details. That's why we say our architectural heritage is a very unique heritage in the world.
Next, in New Orleans, rebuilding a city after Hurricane Katrina. And in Saudi Arabia, the people's palaces back from the brink. New Orleans, birthplace of jazz. It's a city where the French roots of its food and architecture are still in evidence. On August 29, 2005, tragedy struck as Hurricane Katrina made landfall with wind speeds reaching 280 kilometers per hour. It was the costliest disaster in US history, before the Gulf of Mexico oil rig catastrophe. When Katrina struck, 80% of New Orleans flooded and over 1,800 people lost their lives. 200,000 homes were destroyed or damaged, and 800,000 citizens fled. Our hero in this episode is someone who has been working in the preservation of the city's heritage for 35 years and who has led one of the most effective restoration programs since Katrina. This is Pat Gay.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill.
The move to save the city's heritage started 30 years before Katrina. In 1974, the Preservation Resource Center learnt that a development firm intended to demolish a row of 19th century buildings on Julia Street, in the heart of downtown New Orleans. It was Pat Gay's first foray into heritage preservation.
Every single one of these buildings was in terrible condition, and we were able to acquire one of the 13 identical townhouses that were built in 1832 and restore it. And look at the ripple effect. All of the rest of these magnificent buildings have been restored, and it's an incredible landmark.
The Preservation Resource Center's strategy was to buy a house, restore it, and reveal its potential to prospective buyers. By 1981, the entire row had been salvaged.
I maintain you won't have much of a cultural heritage at all if you don't have your historic built environment. In other parts of the world, I think it's taken for granted. But in the United States, we are sort of always looking ahead, not looking back at history. The new is better. We were losing our cultural heritage in so many cities.
Pat Gay started work at the Preservation Resource Centre in 1974. There was a full-time staff of just 2 people and almost no funds. Today, 45 work for the centre that has an annual budget of $6 million.
Every house represents an investment. We say these houses can't be reproduced. They are unique. And when you save an old house, you really enhance your equity far more than if you would build a new house. So we get involved not just because we love these neighborhoods and believe in what it does for our culture and our quality of life, but also for what it does for our economy.
Oh yeah, baby.
One of her projects involves the restoration of houses that have been occupied by New Orleans jazz legends. This was the former home of jazz virtuoso Kid Shake, restored by the Resource Centre. Kid Shake's daughter, Miss Skidmore, now 98, is its proud owner.
We just loving people, we kind people, we love one another. You might see us crabbing one another, kissing one another. Hey, cause, that's the kind of people New Orleans people love, and that's how Kid Shake was. And he kept a smile on his face. Always smiling, always smiling.
But it was Hurricane Katrina that presented Gay and her team with their biggest challenge. The lower 9th Ward was one of the hardest hit. It's one of the oldest and also one of the poorest parts of the city. The Resource Centre's facelift, called Operation Comeback, is now well underway. Pam Bryant is in charge.
We identify blighted and abandoned property that's in historic areas of New Orleans. We acquire it, we restore it, and then we sell it. This house happens to be a 1898 shotgun house. Shotgun houses are known by that name because it allowed someone to hold a shotgun at the front door and basically the bullet would go all the way to the back door.
The debris left behind by Katrina is now collected, sorted and sold to bring in money to help fund Operation Comeback. It's captured the imagination of the country, and now volunteers from all over the United States are joining in the restoration of old homes in the lower 9th Ward.
I think that people are still very interested, even 5 years after Katrina, to come down and help people get back into their homes.
The main goal for Pat Gay and the Centre is to use the newly restored homes to attract residents of the Hurricane Katrina exodus to return.
I think people are just very excited about having a chance to move into a historic home that's also been renovated so it has all the modern amenities.
Now, with many hundreds of houses restored, over 50 in the 9th Ward alone, people who fled when Katrina struck are beginning to return to their homes. But it's a trickle, and the city's population remains far below pre-hurricane levels.
You can see there's a lot more that remains to be done down here. So our work is never finished, it seems, but we are optimistic because when we see the results, like these beautiful houses and people so proud of their houses, that is what keeps us going.
The village of Rijal al-Mar is in the province of Azir in southwestern Saudi Arabia. Its location at the foot of the mountains that separate the interior from the sea made it a prosperous crossroads for the caravan trade routes and a centre for scholarship. Throughout this area, people used to live in communal houses up to 9 stories high. Built from stone and wood and locally known as palaces, Most are around 300 years old. But with the oil boom, great changes have swept through Saudi Arabia over the last 50 years. The old ways, and with them traditional building skills and crafts, were being lost. In the valleys of Azir, the trend has been to abandon the palaces and move to modern housing with the latest conveniences. Their multi-story stone homes have been left to crumble on their doorsteps. In Rijal Alma, it was the same story. The palaces were deserted and left to the elements. That is, until Mohammed Turshi al-Sogaya, now over 80 years old, kick-started a revival of interest in his village heritage. In the 1980s, he began renovating one of the old palaces he owned, using only traditional techniques. His action inspired the whole community, and now Rijal Alma is one of the best-preserved 18th century villages in Saudi Arabia.
Our goal, our message we want to give, is that this region is rich in heritage. We have a lot of traditions and heritage that we are proud of. If we cannot keep our past, then there is no way to keep our present.
Mohammed Turshi al-Sogaya is our heritage hero of Rijal Alma. Turshi has renovated 9 palaces, but it's mostly structural and exterior work. On a visit inside one of the palaces, Turshi points out some of the special features he wants preserved. Going up through the stories of the building, he says the rooms tell of centuries of village life. The palaces were built for communal living. Each floor would have been used by a separate family who moved freely around the building. There were balconies to take in the last of the day's sun. Women decorated the floors with clay designs and used to try and outcompete each other to make the most attractive wall paintings. Building the 5 to 9 story high buildings had required skills that had all but vanished. Turshi was undaunted.
I took it apart. I took out all the ruined pieces, then rebuilt it all again. I reinforced the foundations so well that there is not a single weak spot. When I finished restoring this palace, the others saw the fruits of my labour and said, "We should restore the other palaces as well." My effort would be enough, but they agreed to finance it, whatever it costs, as I saw fit.
Seeing what he had achieved, Turshi quickly gained support from leading members of the community.
This is my old school, before 50 years. That is my first class here. And
Ali Mogawi is also trying to ensure Rijal Alma's place in history is not forgotten.
I have a dream that this village will be an important culture place. I hope to rebuild all the palaces here. I hope the new generation answer the important question, who are we?
To help new generations understand their history, the community decided to make a permanent collection of everyday objects to give a picture of life as it was once lived in Rijal Alma. An appeal went out for donations to the museum. On display are jewellery that would normally be kept within the family as heirlooms, cooking utensils, farming tools, and guns from a time when the settlements needed to protect themselves from raids. The museum is run by volunteers. It's become a well-known tourist destination in its own right, and with some 30,000 paying visitors a year, the village has been able to reinvest in further restoration work. While Saudi Arabia has been developing at breakneck pace, a visit to Rijal Alma is a chance for Saudis to reconnect with the traditions many are leaving behind.
The museum is just beautiful. It's so wonderful. It needs nothing more. It has the old heritage. We've learned a lot. So many things we didn't know about the life of our ancestors.
It's very important to protect our heritage. Every citizen should do that. Those who find or collect old objects should bring them here so that they are protected among the heritage in this museum. We thank Allah, for we are blessed with all the beautiful things in the past and the present. We are truly blessed.
After years of self-funded work, the success of the preservation of Rijal al-Ma has made an impact on the Saudi government. 4 years ago, the village won the Prince Sultan bin Salman Award for Urban Heritage.
Rijal al-Ma to me was an inspiration by all measures. It is an experience of a people, a group, that have believed in culture and heritage, wanted to protect it, saw the benefits of protecting their own heritage. It's really a thoughts of admiration of a people that believed in what they were doing, expended their own energy, their own small financial resources. And so it is really an inspirational project for us all.
And the best is yet to come. The new generation, our children, can now carry on from this foundation that we laid down for them.
Next time, in Morocco, saving the old Medina of Fez. In the UK, a giant engine that powered the Industrial Revolution runs again. And in Argentina, a small pressure group ignites a city's passion for its past.